Recently, I have found myself watching a lot of men's fashion YouTube shorts, primarily because clothing and accessories is really the only non-essential commodity I indulge in, other than sausage rolls, and secondly because I'm trying to convince YouTube that I'm not a 15-year-old incel primed to be indoctrinated into the alt-right pipeline, evident by the plethora of Andrew Tate destroys feminist and Piers Morgan eviscerates vegan videos that I'm constantly bombarded with. For the many valid criticisms that can be thrown at the ever so popular and trendy short form content, men's fashion on this platform enables me to discover new styles and items in a more rapid and digestible manner, without having the opinions of the fashion elitists to influence my opinion. After all, you should wear what you like, so long what you like is not bell bottoms or whatever the fuck this is.
Bruh.
In fact, for many of the channels that I watch, being anti-elitist and opposed to arbitrary rules set by fashion experts or old ideas is a highly promoted theme. Now, as you would expect, these content creators obviously care a lot about their presentation, and their style of videos naturally lends them to delve into the world of
self-improvement.
Stop wasting your time at bars and clubs.
You just want to attract dumb women, the 90% of women, then you don't have to follow this advice.
Put on makeup, his hair's in a bun, he's wearing a sweat. He's there for the free steak you're about to buy.
You roll your fat ass out of bed and all you want is some damn cinnamon buns.
Now, you'll certainly find many useful videos here, such as grooming tips and general hygiene advice, which in all honesty should be mandatory for all men to watch. But soon you'll get suggested videos with overpriced fancy skincare routines beyond even what dermatologists would recommend. Then videos pushing rigid beauty standards under the guise of quote unquote glowing up with straight up misinformation to sell their shitty products. Before some alpha male who's literally the personification of r/confidently incorrect sneaks in with his simplified pseudoscientific worldview to promote the tradcon aesthetics to his audience of hyena manifesting teenagers.
A lot of guys are deciding to let their hair drop down towards their forehead. It gives you this sort of like TikTok boy, young guy, immature look. Your goal is to try to look more masculine, and the best way to do that is to remove that hair from your forehead. So you can either slick it back or slick it upwards with more volume.
Get a free guide on 6 best business models, more info on my profile.
This is copium for the fact that the numerous women in his life that broke his heart and caused him to start going to the gym actually have varied subjective preferences, and many of them are simply more attracted to TikTok e-boys than they will ever be to him. But of course, his fragile ego won't let him believe anything that goes against his linear dogmatic view of female hypergamy. Also, notice how the vast majority of these alpha males have a strong focus on aesthetics, in the form of appearance, lifestyle, and optics, because the substance of their messaging is literally limited to aesthetics. Hence why their audience is strictly impressionable children or deranged incels who are easily enthralled by contrarianism and edgelord content seasoned with misogyny. Now, once you've made it this far, you'll eventually land on even more absurd videos like this.
I've been trying out this thing called a new face, which sends microcurrents into your face, lifting and contouring your facial muscles. Just use it 5 minutes a day, 5 times a week, and potentially it gives you sharper, more pronounced facial features. I got this one from Nordstrom Rack for about 130 bucks, and I do think I noticed it working a little bit after each use. I do think I noticed it working a little bit
Talking bullshit.
for about 130 bucks.
Do I look like a fucking fool to you?
I don't know.
There are very little studies conducted on the claims of this device, and the ones that exist do seem to suggest potential improvements in the thickness of facial muscles. But there's just not enough confidence on these materials, as the experiments did not gather long-term results or were conducted on mice. In fact, microcurrents don't even cause facial muscles to contract, and for the most part, claims of this having substantial improvements to facial attributes is purely anecdotal and could easily be misattributed, especially given its hefty price. I can imagine people convincing themselves that it's working, then to believe they were scammed by predatory corporate marketing. Also, tightening muscles leads to wrinkles, which is obviously something the influencers nor the companies will tell you. And on this note, I found this hilarious article of a woman claiming she no longer needs Botox because of this facial toner, when in actuality, Botox paralyzes the facial muscles to have the reverse effect of this device. By virtue of having to upload regularly to stay relevant, even the most progressive figures on this side of YouTube often end up creating endless needs. These videos get you in a mentality of obsessing over your presentation and quote-unquote value. So when you discover that you're not doing something or you don't own a certain item, you immediately feel like you are lacking in that department. This is nothing new. The beauty industry has been capitalizing on insecurities which they themselves create or further exploit since the dawn of its conception. But when packaged under the guise of self-improvement, this can be a very predatory way to grab people in. Now, despite consuming a lot of fashion content, it is not a field that I am particularly knowledgeable in or care enough to obsess over the details. My engagement is primarily driven because fashion is a way to express myself and it makes me feel confident when I dress nicely. Ultimately, self-fulfilling reasons like this should be why you engage in self-care and not because you're quote-unquote leveling up with the sole expectations that you'll be more dateable, more masculine and pull yourself by the bootstraps to prosperity. Life is more complex to reduce this to a checklist or gamify improvements. Once you cross the threshold of having good hygiene, being presentable and having decent social skills, I would argue that the returns on further progression is minimal when it comes to your likability and there is more to be influenced by the content of your character. The consumerism that is often promoted in this realm of content often ends up being antithetical to self-improvement and leads one to never being content and actually enjoying life. There is always something to work on and thus something to purchase, keeping you grinding for frivolous goals. Self-care is undoubtedly important. However, it is even more important to establish the difference between self-care and wasting your life stuck in a stringent loop of fallacious exploration and dissatisfaction. Ultimately, our time on this planet is short and there is so much more of life to enjoy. So, next time your personal trainer tells you to lay off those sausage rolls, tell them to
Shut the fuck up, you cunt!